just kidding. We need like some cool music to play because
because Facebook will like shut.
No, but it has to be like not like someone else's music. We need to find like our own little jingle. I don't know what that is. If you guys have ideas, I'd love to know. Like, go to Audio Jungle and be like, this sounds like you guys, but it needs to sound more like him because it's on your page.
Oh my gosh.
You guys, welcome back for another episode.
Yeah.
Session week.
Look, we named them episodes.
You're right.
Episode number 9.
That would require me looking at the screen. We have done this 9 weeks in a row. Go us. Oh. But welcome you guys to another week of Cash and Courage, where we are talking today about, like I need a drum roll because it's in the thing.
That's another thing. We're talking about the evil X's.
Does evil X number 1 rule your empire? And before we can actually answer that question, y'all might want to know, Joe, what's evil X number 1?
Evil X, well, it's a surprise.
It is a surprise? Oh, where do you want to start?
I don't know. We can start there. Because there are 3 evil X's, and we're definitely going to talk about number 1 this week.
Yeah.
And
where did this whole evil X come from? What's this all about?
The evil X's. Oh, because like I learned about the X's, right? And then I took it one step further and named them evil X's because Debbie's favorite show in the world is Scott Pilgrim versus the World.
One of them,
right?
Yeah.
And so if you've never seen it and want just like a goofy cult classic, Scott Pilgrim versus the World, it's based off a graphic novel.
Oh my gosh, I love it.
And the whole premise in there is he has to fight off this new girl that he likes.
He doesn't have to fight her off.
No,
in order to get with the girl that he likes to be her boyfriend, he has to fight her 7 evil exes.
Yeah.
And so you name these ones.
It's a fun premise. It's a fun premise like, as a show, but that's kind of where I came up with the evil exes, right? About right, these 3, and it goes off because all 3 words start with EX, so they're X's. Kind of fun to explain, but.
And the evil exes, why do we have those? I mean, what's that all about? I mean, we'll talk about each of them individually. Today, we're going to talk about the evil X number 1. But the idea in general of the evil X's, what do the evil X's do to us and to our money?
So here's the first step in why they're called the evil X's, right? Because every time you find yourself falling into one of these X's, we'll talk about what they are specifically.
It's like going back to the boyfriend that's no good for you or girlfriend.
It's true, right? It's true.
Yeah.
Like going back to this old behavior that doesn't help you, because what happens is we're out of alignment with ourselves, our values, and where we want to go. It's really what happens. So every time we fall into one of the evil X's, it means that it's time to take a check-in with ourselves, right? Look at yourself and be like, okay, where is this showing up and how is it affecting me? And then just change it, right?
So the reason this is on our mind today is because I had my personal session with Joe this morning, kind of resetting the wheel and going for another round of the Money Mastery Playbook with Joe. And I'm there this morning and it just starts and it's the day of setting goals. That's all I was supposed to do today. You'd think it would be a really light appointment. And it turned out I was relatively angry, like a wee little bit, right?
Just a little bit.
So much anger at money, so much anger at myself, so much anger at some lack of progress that I didn't feel like I was seeing. And Joe listens to all this and he asks his probing, needling, painful questions. It's really not that bad, but it's always worse when it's your spouse asking you the questions. So he's asking these questions and he's like, you know what I'm hearing? And I'm like, I don't want to hear what you're hearing, but I do. What are you hearing? And he brought back up the fact that I had fallen back into the pattern of listening to one of my evil exes. And like we said, it's like falling back into dating someone who isn't good for you. You've left them, you're over them, you're moving on. And then for some reason, doubt crops up, fear crops up. And it's like, well, maybe that's the way to be. Maybe that's the place to go. And Joe, what is the evil X number 1 that we're going to talk about today?
Big drum roll, because evil X number 1, well, let's talk about all 3 real quick. So evil X number 1 are expectations, right? Expectations of ourselves, of others, of things to come, right? Anytime you find yourself saying, I expect, that's evil X number 1, right? It'll catch you every time.
Or I should.
That's
like is the softer version of I expect.
Yeah.
Because as soon as I'm like, well, I should, and this should, and all things should, it's like.
And then you're starting to should all over yourself.
But it's an indicator that you have an expectation there, or that I did.
Yep. So that's number 1. Number 2 are explanations, right? So anytime you feel yourself starting to explain yourself to others.
This is why I want this. This is why that matters to me. This
Well, you
is
have
why
to justify it to other people.
Justifications.
Right? Number 3 are, excuses. Anytime you start bringing up excuses of why you did something.
Or didn't do something.
Yep.
It just shows, and this is all about indication of alignment and not alignment. And what we know is that when we're in alignment, it is easier for cash to show up in our life. It is easier to draw it to us. And when we're out of alignment, think about alignment as though there's like this flow, like you're standing under a faucet, okay? And all this water is pouring on you. Alignment means I'm in alignment, or I am aligned with the faucet, okay? And out of alignment means I've stepped outside. So now all the water is pouring here, all the abundance, all the cash, but I'm over here. So we just need to get, off the screen. We just need to get into alignment. And so that's what Joe had called me out on this today, is looking at the goals. And do you want to talk about the difference between expectations and goals?
Yeah,
I feel like I'm really driving this conversation. Sorry. Feel free to cut me off at any time.
So I want everybody to, so we're going to dive into the rest of the time we have. We're going to really dive into expectations, because I name it number 1, the number 1 evil X, because most people struggle with this the most, right? Excuses and explanations, not as much, but you catch yourself there sometimes. But expectations, because we're all high performers. We all want to just like go out there and take the world by storm, right?
And we're all taught to have goals, and we're all taught to have KPIs that lead up to goals. And we're all like shooting to make something happen. Okay. And so I think that's why it's the number one thing the trap we fall into, or the evil X that we go back to, is because of that drive and because of that desire for the goal.
Well, because we have the two mixed up, right?
And that's where I wanted to go.
Of what we want versus we just have a goal to put out there. So the biggest difference between goals and expectations means
because I can already hear some of the high performers right now that are going, wait a minute, are you saying I can't have a goal? Go ahead.
Of course you can have goals. I encourage goals. Right? But goals are set out there so we have a milestone of what we want to hit, and we don't fall apart whether we hit it or not. Right? That makes sense?
I'm going to stay with that for a second.
Okay.
So you're saying a goal can become an expectation.
Yes, very easy.
And an expectation is essentially this must happen or else.
Well, we haven't got to that part yet, but yes.
Okay, so define expectation.
Just a goal, right? An expectation is what you were saying, right? This must happen or else. Everything rides upon this one outcome.
And not just everything is in our budget and our finances, but everything is in like, are we good enough to be an entrepreneur? Are we good enough to do the thing that we're doing? Are we good enough in our skills, good enough in our talents? Are we smart enough? It like starts to attack.
It does, and it goes one level lower, right? Because when we have expectations, right, and I'm going to challenge every single one of you because this is exactly what always happens. We have a story about the outcome. And when that outcome doesn't happen the exact way we imagined it, we fall apart. It doesn't matter whether you hit the end goal like you wanted to, but it didn't happen the way you wanted it to. Right.
So you're saying like, even if like, say I had a goal to reach $10,000,
yeah,
but I was able to meet the goal of $10,000, but I was planning on meeting it through selling VIP days.
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up fulfilling it by getting a copywriting contract.
Yeah.
And I'm still, a goal is a goal. If it was just a goal, I would be like, woohoo, I got my $10,000. Right? But I know if it's become an expectation, if I hit my 10,000, I'm like, but it wasn't by selling VIP days. I don't know if any of you look like that when you get upset. That's how I look. I'm a very like vocal person. Very theatrical. So that's just how I express. No shame in that. That's how I express. But that's what you're saying, is that the expectation, when a goal turns into an expectation, or when anything turns into an expectation, if we don't meet the expectation, then there's a falling out within ourselves and between ourselves and either other people or what we're trying to create.
Yes, right. Because every time we have an expectation, there always, it's like comparison, right? There's a separation that starts to happen. Mostly with ourselves, but sometimes with other people. Like an expectation with myself says, oh, I have a money goal, right?
I'm separating.
Oh, you're separating? I'm like, where are you going? You're like going. But if I have a money goal, like we were just talking about, let's say, hey, I want to hit $10,000 a month. And, it doesn't come in the way we want it to, right? That expectation. Then we start to have a separation from, ourselves from our goal, right? From the money, from other people, because we're probably angry at because someone didn't buy our stuff, right? We want it to come in a certain way.
Lots of anger between us and our clients, and if we're angry at our clients, that's what we're doing. Okay.
Denise, I have a lot of expectations.
Don't we all, my love? Don't we all? If you are a high performer, if you are driven and ambitious, there is a high, like 90 to 99% chance that you deal often with expectations, because those expectations in the past have been what have driven you, right? You have desires for high achieving and overachieving, and you set these goals and you reach these goals. And so there is an expectation that you can keep up, keep going, keep doing, keep performing, keep, all of those things. So know that you're not alone, that all ambitious, high performing, driven people run into this. And even those who are less high performing and driven,
whatever.
I wouldn't consider myself a 90% like high performer. I am an overachiever, but I'm not an A-type personality. And there's no good or bad in all of that. It's just understanding that when we're driven like that, and when we're constantly using goals as our benchmarks, it's okay to use them as benchmarks. It's okay to use them as milestones. We like to talk a lot about how goals and the results of goals is simply feedback for the system. Mm-hmm. Did my plan work? Did my strategy work? Did it work well? What do I need to tweak? How can I improve it? So goals are there to give us feedback for the system. Expectations start to undermine us and our relationships. And one you didn't mention, because I totally interrupted you, is also source. Expectations can very quickly and easily divide us from our higher powers, because we do the praying and we do the asking, we get the intuitive hits. Because if you're on this channel and you're following Joe, I know that you are also an intuitive or spiritual person as much as you are a driven person. You care about the world and you care about your higher power, and you want to be aligned to all of those things. And so, am I right in that?
Yep.
I'm like, right? I shouldn't be saying things like that. But yes. That being said, when we ask for answers and we feel like we get them and we take action on them, but the result is not what we expected, right? Sometimes the result is that annoying thing called growth.
It's so funny.
But it's true. Where like you
is.
get to the end of it and you were expecting like a monetary result, and the monetary result isn't there, but the personal growth and the personal development and that strength between you and your higher power, like that shines through. And yet part of you is still like, but it wasn't what I wanted or thought or expected.
Or was it?
And it can, but if I'm married to the expectation,
and that's what
if I've allowed the evil X to come in,
then you're going to be like, I didn't make my money going, I'm going to fall apart now, blah, blah, blah.
And therefore, like me and my higher power, it starts to, like, if this is the flow, right? And I want to be in flow to receive inspiration, intuition, and income, then I want to be here. But expectation goes, you didn't do it the way that I wanted to, it didn't look the way I wanted to. And pretty soon we find ourselves
out.
Yeah.
So I want to talk, there's a couple of things I want to do, and so we're going to go super far over.
Okay.
So the one is the goal. So have goals. If you don't meet those goals, be more specific about your goals. Maybe your goals are just too general, right? But again, don't set them in stone so they can't change. It's like flexible structure. The goals are there for you to be able to achieve something and drive towards something. But as soon as we don't hit it, we're like all getting angry at ourselves. It's time to see if you have an expectation or if you just have an expectation. Okay?
I love that he pretends to give you two choices, but really he's like, no, if you're upset, then you have an expectation.
It's true, okay?
That you're back in bed with your evil ex.
It's very true, right? And money doesn't like that, right? To have an expectation on what money will do for you, it starts to become very angry and goes away. Because here's the deal. Here's what I know, right? If money's just a relationship, we'll go there, right? So we all know that's true, right? Mm-hmm. Money is a relationship. Think about the expectations you have for people that you hire. Right? You sign a contract with somebody, and if they don't fulfill, what happens? Do you have such an expectation of that person that you get angry with them and just write them out and they're done? Or are you an adult, drop the expectation and have a conversation with them and figure out what's going on? Because here's what I know, right? Like I said earlier, expectations always cause separation, right? Whether it's with yourself, your higher power, with other people.
And notice the story part, because it doesn't mean you can't fire someone who's not performing as the way they said that they would perform. But in an expectation, we're going to write a story about that person and about what's happening before we've even asked the question.
Yeah.
Whether it's with the team that we've hired or results that we've gotten, we're writing a story and reacting to the story rather than really looking at what's going on underneath. So like today, I'm having my kind of come apart. I look like a tantrum, like a toddler. The only thing I didn't do was get on the floor and kick and throw my feet, even though I wanted to. Didn't do it. But I'm having my tantrum, and we get to the end, and Joe's like, does this thing where he just looks at you. And I'm like, what? Right? And he says, I have my notes right here from this morning's meeting. And he goes, what expectations are holding you back right now? That's the question you need to ask yourself. And for me, I was like, I don't have any expectations holding me back. That's not what the problem is. And he sits for a second and he just like looks at me and I'm like, okay, so what expectations are you seeing? And what he shared with me is like, I had a story about how people could come to me. I had an expectation that they could only show up in a certain way and in a certain amount of time. And when that didn't happen and that window is closing really, really fast, that means it's all over. It's all done. I've got to close my doors, close my company. Like, seriously, this was a conversation. I was ready to light everything on fire and be like, there's no reason. Nobody wants to hire me. You know, all that like over dramatic, woe is me, alas, poor sorrow stuff. But it came back to what was the expectation I was holding? What was the story I was making up about people choosing in and about the offer and the event that I'm holding? What was the story? Because the story was driving my emotions and my actions instead of alignment and inspiration driving my emotions and my actions.
It's very true.
That's why you're so smart. It's annoying, but he is. He is. He's super smart. It's only annoying when I'm in the throes of anger.
So much.
Hey, when I'm in a pity party, you right? Sometimes you're just like, just agree with me. He's not going to agree with you. He'll just sit and watch you for a second, and he'll be like, so.
I'll let you have your counterpart, right? But if we look at it from this perspective, and that's why we want to talk about expectations today, right? Is it really starts to cause, I mean, because look at, like, from Debbie's example, you know, she could have had a complete come apart, burn it all down, and then what happens? She's separating herself from the people she wants to serve. Right.
And from the event that my higher power told me to hold for them because of the need for people to gather right now and the need for people to be belly to belly. I'm so close to just being like burning all the hours I've spent, all the money I've spent on vendors, of just being like, it's over, it's done, there's no chance. And how much time did you say I still have to get people at my event?
You?
Yeah. I have over 60 days.
Yeah, you got plenty of time. Right.
I have 60 days. There's still a window there, but because of a story and expectation.
You want to light it all on fire today.
I did.
I'm like.
And I even have some people already signed up to come. So it's not like nobody's signing up, but I had an expectation of how many people would have been signed up by now. And I allowed the expectation and the story behind the expectation to dictate to me how I felt about myself, how I felt about the people I love, how I felt about the people I serve, and how I felt about my higher power and about continuing forward in this endeavor. So it's fascinating to me how quickly we are willing to destroy those things that are most important to us or most aligned to us because of an evil ex.
Yep.
Who's just there to make you miserable anyway.
Just like all
Isn't that what all evil exes do? Like if you go back to Scott Pilgrim versus the World, the thing that I think is super amazing about that story, especially in this context, is the leader of the evil exes. He put together this whole league because his whole purpose was, if she can't be with me, she can't be with anybody. She needs to be miserable. That was his whole purpose. And I feel like the evil ex in this life and in this scenario, this evil ex of expectation, same. If you're not going to live in that story and that expectation and be in the drama and be in the pity party, then that evil ex doesn't want you anywhere else. If it can't have you, nobody can have you. That's really what I feel. That's what I felt this morning.
It's pretty dramatic, but it's really what happens, right? So, I mean, I think at the end, look and see where expectations are in your lives, where you're holding them, and it's time to let them go. Like, really, you got to take people off pedestals. You got to take yourself off a pedestal that you can never achieve. Like, as soon as you put somebody up there, including, like, let's pull this out.
Oh, yeah.
Including money and how it's supposed to show up in your life. You got to stop. Like, today's the day to just, like, drop it all. No more expectations. Goals are great. Like, really, goals help drive us towards what we're looking for. But you got to let go of the expectations, because you continue to cause separation in your life. And guess what? There's no amount of money that's going to show up in your life if you're separated from yourself, from your divine being, whoever that is, and other people. Like, it's not going to show up, because it's one of the biggest relationships that you want in your life, but you continue to push it away and have some weird expectation about how it's going to show up.
You guys, this expectation that I've had has been sitting with me for quite a bit, at least the last 30 to 45 days.
Probably. Yeah.
And it's been beating me over the head again and again and again. We've missed a few weeks of meeting. So, not that I'm saying that's your fault. I didn't mean to make that blame. Ooh, I think that was an excuse. That's another week. But all of this to say, it's been fascinating me to watch, because there's been the opportunity for about $3,000 for me sitting out there in the ether. And it hasn't been finalized. It hasn't been finalized. It hasn't been finalized. I've been getting frustrated, not only in the live event space, but over here in this new $3,000 that I've been looking for, or that is right on the horizon to come, and it's like, and it was fascinating to me that as I met with Joe today and we walked through and identified this expectation and started doing the work to release it, right? To recognize it and to release it. I got an email less than an hour after our conversation being like, oh, hey, by the way, let's finalize this. Here's the money. Like, what? And I'd like to call this a coincidence, only I've worked with Joe long enough
Those don't exist.
to know that in these scenarios, like, I do the work he tells me to, money shows up. That's what happens. And it doesn't always happen the way that I want it to, or the way that I expect it to. Mm-hmm. Let's be real, or how fast I expect it to. But it comes. And I think today was I hate the word tender mercy, but I'm going to say it anyway. I think today was a very tender mercy from my higher power to remind me that I am not alone in this, and that this is about taking the steps that are in alignment and trusting the process, and trusting that our higher power has our back, and all will work out for our greatest good. It may not feel like it at the time. It won't feel like it some often. But looking in hindsight, I can look back and go, oh, when I've released the stories and released the expectations, powerful things have happened in my life.
You always have better results.
I do. I see results every single time. And so that's, I think, why we wanted to jump on here and share expectations with you today, because I was just like, holy shit. Like, it blew my mind. It blew my mind again. And so, guys, do what this man tells you to.
So here's the takeaway for today, right?
I shouldn't say it like that. I should say, put him to the test. Put him to the test. Okay, what's the takeaway?
So here's the takeaway for today. Okay, so catalog your life, look at it, look and find out where you have expectations. Watch your language. Anytime you say I expect or I should, that's an expectation.
Or I expect you should, or just you should.
Yeah, watch
or
all
they
that language,
should.
Right? Today's about awareness, right? Become aware of where you're using this in your life, and it's time to let it go, because it is going to feel like an X, right? Mm-hmm. It's going to feel very comfortable, very familiar, but it's time to let it go. Or you can just not and just stay where you're at. Like, the choice is yours.
Yeah, if you're happy where you're at, you don't have to change anything at all.
But if you stuck on here long enough and watched this whole video up to this point, then I know you want something different. So it's time to let go of your expectations, because if not, they're going to drown you, and you're going to continue to separate yourself from yourself, your divine, and other people. And that's not going to get you anywhere. Well, I guess it's going to get you like miserable and like by yourself.
It'll get you the same thing that you've always had. And if that's what you want, great. But if you want something different, it's time to do something different.
Yep.
And one thing that Joe always, as we close out this call, awareness is only the first step, my friends. It can only be the first step. Just being aware alone can be powerful and can already start to make micro movements. But beyond awareness, it takes what?
Action.
We got to do something about it.
Don't just think it through, but do something about it.
And in order to stay in consistent action, what do we need?
Accountability.
Absolutely. Because you know that evil ex, you know that boyfriend or girlfriend you had once upon a time that you kept going back to? There's a reason we keep going back. Sometimes it's because we feel defeated. Sometimes it's because we think we had it better over there. Sometimes it's because we forget how terrible it really was. And having someone to help you hold through the storm or through the creation of a new pattern.
Or to remind you that you don't have to keep going back there, right? It's always helpful.
More than helpful, it's powerful. It's essential. So if you're sitting here going, I could really use some help identifying my expectations, being aware and taking action on them, I'm going to encourage you to take action on getting a hold of this guy and setting up an appointment with him to see if moving forward and making more money in your life is what is aligned for you right now. So don't wait. Go do the things he told you to do, but also know that there's power in accountability. And both of us are ready to serve you in that way.
Yep.
But if it's about money, this is the guy. You don't want to come to me if it's about money. So you guys, thank you so much for everybody that was here today. It was so fun to see everyone. Go ahead and say hi in the comments if you haven't already. Facebook tells us that you're here, but it doesn't always tell us who you are. And we'd really love to be able to come in and say hi back to you. So we appreciate that you show up. We appreciate you sharing this with your friends. And if you know people in your life who are constantly like, where's money, where's money, where's money, and who you know are ready and wanting to do something different, please share this with them.
Yes.
And let people know.
People who are willing and wanting to change. Because if not, I talk to too many people who just like, I want more money. And I'm like, hey, go do this. And they're like, yeah, but I'll do that later. Like, that doesn't work for me. Like, honestly, like, I'm looking for people who want to make a difference in their own lives, but in the lives around the people around them, right? So, just want to put that qualifier out there, right? I only have so much time in the day, and so I'm looking for people who want to change. Because the rest of the people are going to be stuck where they're at because guess what? They just keep doing the same stuff over and over.
Yeah. So any high performers that you know, overachievers, people who are obsessed with what they bring to the world and obsessed with making the world a better place and making income to make impact, send them our way. We would love to talk to them.
Yep. Cool. If you have any questions or if you want to hear about anything else, as always, comment below. Share my page and this with everybody you know. Yeah. So we'll be back next week.
Let's be millionaires together.
We'll be back next week at the same time. And next week we're going to, unless something changes between now and then, we're probably going to talk about Evil Ex number 2.
Yep.
So.
All right.
Maybe not.
We'll see.
Until next week. See ya.
Bye.